Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence. I'm Rick, and this is my co-host, Emily.
Welcome back.
Okay, everybody, we have been talking about dual footprints, becoming a world-class mentor. And today's episode is a commitment to accountability anchored in integrity. However, before we begin, today is September the 11th. 24 years ago today, our nation was attacked in New York at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania by Islamic terrorists, killing 2,977 people, and that includes 343 firefighters from FDNY when the Twin Towers of the Trade Center, the World Trade Center, collapsed. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah.
And I feel, Emily, that far too many people have forgotten
Yeah,
about that, and we never should. That was a terrible attack on
absolutely.
our nation. So moving on, next episode will be September the 25th, and as I've mentioned in the last two episodes, we will have our very first guest, Chris Robinson, who is the Executive Vice President of the John Maxwell Certified Leadership Team. I was at a Maxwell event in June with Chris was there. It was the first time I'd ever met him in person. And he asked at a table about our backgrounds. And I told him that this is one of the things I do is podcasting. And at the end of that event, Chris came up to me and said, "Hey, if you'd ever like to have me on as a guest, let me know." So I let him know.
Super
And
exciting.
yeah, and Emily and we record this section right now in July. And so here in a couple weeks, we are going to interview Chris, and we're looking forward to that interview and looking forward to having him on as our very first guest. Now you may say, "Wow, is he a firefighter?" No, he's not a firefighter. Chris has never been a firefighter, but Chris is a leader
Yeah.
and he understands leadership and he brings things to the table that we all need to hear. And with that being said, you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. We know for a fact that we have people who are not firefighters that are listening to this. Hey, matter
Yeah.
of fact, we know for a fact there's at least one police officer that listens to this. And now, whether or not he or any other police officers want to admit that they listen to a fire guy, I don't know. Hey, I listen to cops. I've got books on my shelf here that have been written by police officers. But hey, folks, we get that funny, not funny. Um, yeah, it can be a funny competition that
Yeah.
exists between us.
And the
So,
reason it's called Firehouse Talks is because when you were on shift, you would head to the firehouse and they would pour you a cup of coffee and you would just sit at the table and talk with them about life and all things non-related to fire or related to fire. So that
yeah,
is why we have titled it Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick.
yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
just that you are sitting at our table drinking a cup of coffee with us, learning about leadership.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. So, folks, I mentioned the dual footprints, becoming a world-class mentor. That stem from a series of blogs that I have written underneath the same title. And then Emily took that and we put it into an ebook. At the end of this episode right here, we'll tell you how you can get that for free. But what we have been talking about here over these last several episodes is a commitment to time, a commitment to transparency, a commitment to killing the ego, a commitment to listening, a commitment to growth and development. And in this segment, we are talking about a commitment to accountability, which is what, Emily?
So, accountability is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's action.
Oh, ooh, accept responsibility. Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, boy, there's a lack of that around the world today, isn't
yes,
there?
absolutely. So, let's talk about why integrity is the gravity of accountability.
Ooh, that's good.
And we're going to explore the link between accountability, character, and integrity. So, you have this quote from an unknown source that accountability, responsibility, and dependability, that's a lot of abilities,
Yeah, there's a lot of ability.
are orbiting moons influenced by the gravity of the planet integrity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We didn't know, folks. You know, we came across that quote. We liked it. It's an unknown source. We don't know who the originator was of that. So, you know, if you somebody out there is listening to this and you did originate that, hey, drop us an email and say, hey, my name's Joe Schmackatelli, and I'm the one that originally said that. But you know, without that, listen, people, if you've been listening to our podcast, you know I'm a big advocate of integrity.
Yeah.
And without integrity, these values here, they will spin out of orbit. And that's what happens to people when they lack that moral grounding. They spin out of their orbit.
Yeah.
And there is just, Emily, such a lack of integrity in our society
Oh, yeah.
today. You know, absolutely. It's a, you know, when we look at integrity and a lack of integrity, it's like a lighthouse or an ocean wave. You know, we go to Emerald Isle, North Carolina, and nearby is the Cape Lookout Lighthouse. It's there. It's been there for a long time,
Yeah.
and the light stays on. It's faithful, you know, and the mariners know that that lighthouse is there compared to an ocean wave, which is unpredictable. The lighthouse is dependable.
Yeah.
The ocean waves are unpredictable. Sometimes that ocean is calm. There's other times, even though the sun's out, the wind's blowing and we see a rough surf. Or, you know, when a storm comes up and the water, it's called the crystal coast there, and it's no longer crystal because the waves are being churned up by the wind, the currents, and it's unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what does accountability look like in
Mm.
action? And one of those is it's no excuses,
Ooh.
just ownership. So, let's dive into that. Maturity means owning outcomes, whether that's good or bad.
Yep.
You don't blame, this is funny. You don't blame the full moon or outside circumstances. And
Yeah.
granted, I've actually known someone who has blamed a lot of things on a full moon.
Yeah. Yeah. What are they, a werewolf?
You never know. So, excuses are the skin of reason stuffed with a lie.
Yeah. Yeah, the blame game. You know, some people come up with so many flimsy excuses and reasons, and you know, it's not my fault, or I didn't know, you know, that, you know, whining, crying stuff. They didn't like me. You don't like me. Yeah, the organization sets on, you know, unreasonable rules and regulations. Wah, 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 wah. You know, the- you know, and so when we're talking about a mentoring relationship and accountability, you know, if you're mentoring somebody and the mentee fails to follow through what has been recommended or what they have committed to, we need to look to see, are they going to own it and accept responsibility and take accountability for failing to meet what they said they were going to do. Now, there might be an extremely valid reason. I participate in a weekly roundtable, lasts for an hour, and at the end, we have action steps. When we come back for the next session, we talk about, did we or did we not meet our action steps? And sometimes, and I've had this happen to me, something comes up personally that you're not able to address it. There's been times where someone said, I didn't hit my action step because I have been sick. I got sick on Saturday and I didn't get better until yesterday, so I couldn't even touch that. Okay, that's valid. That's valid, but they are explaining it, and then it's like, okay, you know, I'm going to do this action step the next week.
Yeah.
Hey, look, we're not only looking for that in the people that we are mentoring, we need to model that in our own lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And so for the mentor and the mentee it requires dependability. So
Yeah.
ask yourself, can you be counted on? And part of consistency is trust is only built on consistency. So dependability either erodes trust or it can build trust.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right, Emily. And you and I both know, yeah, and then the people who are listening, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you know people who are not dependable. Yeah, and you don't trust them.
Yeah.
You can't trust them to carry things out, to get things done. But can the other person count on you to show up? Can you show up without having excuses? Oh, I forgot. A couple episodes back, I shared with everyone about a guy that wanted me to mentor him. And we set a time and a location, and I showed up, and he didn't.
Mhm.
And fortunately, I had some work that I brought along with me. And about a half hour into it, it's like, okay, what's going on here? And I called, and there was no answer. I gave it a few more minutes and I called and no answer. I was being really, generous with my time at that point. So I left the coffee shop and he calls me. Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry, Rick. I should have called you. My boss, he sent me up to Estes Park to check on a job. And yeah, I really needed to call you. I said, yeah, you really did need to call me. Now I said, because I've carved out time here. Well, I'm really sorry. I won't let that happen again. So we scheduled another time, Emily. And guess what?
It happened again.
It happened again.
Yeah.
It happened again. And he wouldn't answer the phone. And I left a message. And he called me back about an hour later. Oh, I'm sorry. It happened again. And I said, we're done. What? I said, we're done. I said, you're not dependable and you don't show up. And so consequently, I'm not going to invest my time into someone who could care less about my time.
It's a lack of commitment to and prioritization on their
Yeah,
part
yeah,
as well.
absolutely. And also, when we're mentoring somebody, can we count on that person to be honest? Are we going to be honest if we're mentoring somebody? Hey, listen, if you can't honestly give feedback to somebody, then don't mentor anyone. Don't high five people constantly and slap them on the back when you know that there needs to be change. Hey, when they do need to be high five, do it. Do it. But don't back away from the honest feedback. And, can we count on the other person to be open to growth and will they follow through?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a quote from John Maxwell that we really like that says, leaders without inner strength can't be counted on day after day because their ability to perform changes constantly.
Like the waves.
Yeah. So let's talk about the cost of inconsistency in mentoring relationships. What does that look like?
Missed meetings. Missed meetings. And there could be a good reason for a missed meeting. In the fire service, it could be emergency recall, could be somebody picked up overtime shift, mandatory overtime. Yeah, but there's an individual that I have mentored over the years, and got into a point of inconsistency. It became inconsistent. The individual wanted to meet with me and he wanted to go through a particular book, and we were going through that book, but because of things that were coming up in this individual's life, not only work related, but family related, and it became inconsistent. And so we rarely get together now. And when there's that break there, and there cannot be a consistent time to meet with someone to where we can mentor them, to where we can see that growth in them, to where we can challenge them, it just becomes a couple people getting together every now and then.
Yeah.
So that is a cost of inconsistency, which leads to a lack of growth in
Yeah.
that person
Stagnant.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are things that can happen that will reinforce responsibility. How do we do this? How do we build accountability into a mentoring relationship? Well, number one, there should be clear expectations and action steps. You know, hey, this is how often we're going to meet. This is how long we're going to meet. That does not mean you need to sit down for 3 hours. When you're mentoring somebody, set aside an hour, maybe
Hmm.
an hour and 15 minutes. Beyond that, yeah, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour,
Yeah.
hour and 15 minutes. Beyond that, it starts to become burdensome, on the part of both person.
Yeah.
Hey, when action steps are determined, set a deadline. If you are mentoring or you're the mentee yourself, set a deadline. Hey, I'm going to have this action step, but make it realistic. You might have an action step that cannot be completed before the next time the mentor and the mentee get together. Why? Because it's an action step that requires a lot. It may be an action step that requires, a period of time. But with that, there should also be a report back the next time you meet. This is where I am at with that. And that is reviewing the progress. How did this thing go? And then if there is a hindrance, as the mentor, ask some questions. So, what prevented you from accomplishing this action step? What barriers popped up? How can you maneuver around these barriers, or how can you overcome these barriers in the future?
Yeah. And we want to remind our listeners that accountability isn't just correction, it's course correction.
Yes. Oh yeah, course correction. And when you get on the airplane and you fly from Denver out to California, where I go out there a couple times a year for teaching, there's going to be course corrections made along the way,
Mhm.
up in the cockpit. If not, if I'm flying to Ontario and the pilot doesn't make course corrections, we might wind up in Sacramento.
Yeah. Or Canada.
Yeah, or Canada. Yeah, yeah. And it's the same thing with ships. There's got to be course corrections that are made to keep the ship going in a direction so it can get to that final
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah.
So, we look in the mirror. Why do we look in the mirror? Because it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with Emily.
Mm.
When we are mentoring somebody, both of us, the mentor and the mentee, we need to, am I a man or a woman of integrity? Am I living out what others expect of me? Now, granted, sometimes other people's expectations are absolutely, unrealistic. So let's
Yeah.
bring this down to an organizational level. Uh, yeah, I've got my business now. I'm no longer in the fire department. I retired from the fire department. But if you're working in an organization, are you meeting the expectations that have been set down for you? If not, what's preventing you from doing that?
Yeah. And I think another way to reword it too is, are you being faithful with what you have been given at this time?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Ooh, yeah, I like that, Emily. Are you being faithful with what you have been given at this time? And then here's another one. Are we men and women of our word?
Mm,
Do we keep our word?
yep.
Yeah, there's so many people out there again and these are character issues. People who don't keep their word are character issues. Just like I was telling you, just here a few moments ago about that guy that wanted me to mentor him, but then couldn't even show up, apologizes,
Yeah.
won't let it happen again, and he does.
That does it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that guy has some serious character issues
Yeah.
there.
Keeping
And
your word involves an action,
yeah,
showing
yeah,
up,
yeah,
not just saying, oh, I'll be there. I won't do that again. We'll prove it.
yeah,
Prove it.
yeah, that's right. Prove it, prove it.
Yeah.
It's like the people in Missouri say, show me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
prove it. Are you a man or a woman of your word.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that sounds southern. Accountability is internal before it's external. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems and character.
Ah, yes, character. We've talked a lot
Yes.
about character ever since we started our podcast in February of 2024 because
It's
it's
the
crucial.
foundation.
That's foundational.
Yeah.
It's crucial. I want to hit on the systems aspect of it right there. There's plenty of things that can help us stay on track. You know, just probably nearly every human being walking around the planet anymore has got a cell phone. Well, there's calendars that you can put your appointment in there.
Yeah.
There's reminders. I not only use my calendar on the phone, I also use the Franklin Planner. I got a dual system that's going there. The Franklin Planner, I can also track my daily tasks and what I want to accomplish. And yeah, my appointments, my meetings, they're in two places on the phone, which also shows up on my laptop as well, and in the Franklin Planner. So, wow, that's a lot of systems, Rick. Yeah, you know why? I don't trust technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
folks, you need to be careful yourselves because I have had things disappear after the so-called upgrade, which is not an upgrade. Generally, it's a
Downgrade.
yeah, down. It's it's generally a downgrade in there. So those are systems. What system do you have that keeps you on track?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we uh wow.
As we wrap up.
Thank you. As we wrap up this episode, let's recap some key takeaways is that accountability stems from character. We have very stressed this, but you cannot stress it
Yeah.
enough. And without it, all other mentoring commitments just completely fall
Yeah.
apart. But with it, growth becomes sustainable and trust can become unshakable.
May I jump in there real quick before
Ah,
you continue, Emily? Is sustainability. Growth becomes sustainable.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is so important. Last episode, we talked about habits. When we develop habits, and that's sustainability. Last episode, I also talked about how men say, "Well, I don't like to read," but we got ebooks. You got, yeah, you'd have to read that, but you got audiobooks. That's the what I meant to
Audiobooks.
say.
Yeah.
Is there's audio books out there and if just wandering through life, not picking up anything, you're going to be that average Joe Schmuckatelli and average Betty Schmuckatelli.
Yes. Yeah. So we want to leave our listeners with the challenge be the lighthouse, be the mentor or mentee that others can count on, especially when it's hard.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be the wave. And Emily, the verse slips my mind in the Bible that talks about being tossed to and
Bro.
fro like the waves of the ocean. And
Yeah.
so many people are like that. They have no stability in their life. And hey, folks, don't be that way.
Yeah.
Be that lighthouse, be that beacon of trust that other people can see in you. You know, be influential in other people's lives.
Yeah.
One of the most satisfactory things that I have found in my life is being able to pour into someone else. And that's one of the things that I loved about being a battalion chief. When I was a lieutenant, at that time, we ran a suicide crew, just two people in a station. I had the driver and I was the lieutenant. And fortunately, we moved away from that suicide crew and we went to three people on a rig, like it should be, or even four would be better. Hey, that's
Yeah.
a free unpaid political statement, people. Yeah. But when I was a battalion chief, and I didn't have, or I shouldn't be dragging a hose into a building anymore because I'm the incident commander standing out there. But one of my greatest satisfactions was pouring into the lives of the people on the shift, whether they were assigned to my shift or they were doing a trade shift and they were working that day or they were working overtime. There's a great sense of personal satisfaction that comes with putting our lives into someone else's life.
Absolutely.
Emily, before I recap our commitments, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that you do not have to be in a leadership position in order to either be a mentor
Mhm.
or just to reach out to someone and just sit with them and talk with them like at coffee.
Yeah.
You know, all of us have someone younger than us,
Mhm.
and we've all been through different life experiences. And those life experiences are what can help those other people
Yeah.
if you let it. You can let those life experiences either grow you or make you better.
Mhm.
So it's your choice. How are you going to use those life experiences to impact other people's lives?
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. And what Emily is saying there reminds me that mentoring somebody does not mean you sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to mentor you. Yeah, and we're going to do it on this frequency. I have mentored so many people over the years, and it has not started from, hey, would you mentor me? I have had that happen. I have had a couple times, and it's been on the low end of frequency where somebody has actually come to me and said, hey, would you mentor me? Uh, but the majority of times it has been getting together with someone over a cup of coffee, and I am mentoring them and they are the mentee, and it just flows naturally. So please don't walk away from this series on dual footprints becoming a world-class mentor thinking that you have to have something formal. You've got to have
Yeah.
a formalized agreement. And before I recap all those commitments, let me remind everybody, if you've been listening, dual footprints came about a couple of years ago when myself and our older daughter Rebecca, we were in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, walking along the beach in the evening time, and I turned around and our footprints were in the wet sand and they were being highlighted by the setting sun. And so I told Rebecca, so I'm going to take a picture of this because we can use it sometime. Well, that was May. In June, I did use it. That's when I sat down and I wrote the series Dual Footprints. And as I mentioned earlier in this show right here, then Emily took that, we compiled it into an ebook, and Emily put graphics to it. So here in a minute, I'm going to tell you how you can get a free copy of that. But the recap, when we've been talking about commitments, we've talked about a commitment to time, a commitment to transparency, a commitment to killing the ego, a commitment to listening, a commitment to growth and development. And this one here was a commitment to accountability. If you would like dual footprints becoming a world-class mentor, my email is in the show notes. Drop me an email and I will send you the PDF copy of that for free. I'm not charging for that. Also, in the show notes, you're going to find my website, www.fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. I love mentoring people. Check out my website, see the services that I have to offer. And throughout the series, actually throughout the podcast, I've talked about
Mhm.
my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, which the final chapters in that book deal with mentoring and developing somebody else, but also our own personal development. And as we wrap up, as a reminder, our next episode on September the 25th, we're going to have our very first guest on Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, and it's Chris Robinson, Executive Vice President of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team. So, Emily, as we say goodbye, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okie dokie, folks.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, we will see you later. Bye
Bye.
bye.